Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of the Podiatry Legends Podcast. And
I'm Dr. Jesse Green, and I'm host of the Savvy Dentist Podcast. And this is a special joint episode to celebrate Tyson's episode number
200, and yours is
350. And so what we know then is this is a significant milestone for Tyson's podcast. This is a significant milestone for our podcast. And we thought it'd be fun to come together and have a bit of a chat because, Tyson, how many podcasts have we done together over the years?
We've done a number on It's No Secret with Dr. T, the podcast I had prior to this one. So if you add those and there's 200 episodes, I've actually done more episodes than you, Jesse.
Do you know, I was being so polite and not going there because, ladies and gents, off air, I was having a crack at Tyson about going, 350 versus 200, ha, 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 who's winning? But we all know that to every Batman, there's a Robin, and never mind, Tyson, it's okay, mate. So there we go.
Okay, Barney Rubble. So we thought we'd get together and talk about what we have learnt over, like my 200 episodes on Podiatry Legends and your 350 on the Savvy Dentist Podcast, which I recommend a lot of podiatrists listen to.
And your 211. Let's not forget those. Now you've brought it up. We've got to reference it now, mate.
But we take away, like every week we have guests coming on and we learn so much. And if somebody said to me, what's your biggest takeaway from your podcast? It'd be really hard to say there's one thing, but there's multiple things that I've learned from the different guests. And sometimes I feel really selfish that I get as much out of my podcast as anybody else.
100%. I actually think you get, well, I can't speak for you, but for me, I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the room because I get the questions that I want to ask.
Yeah.
And I go, I was telling you just a moment ago, I had a conversation with Jim Penman from Jim's Mowing, Jim's Dog Washing, Jim's Everything. And the questions there were just the questions that I was curious and fascinated about. And I'm sure you've had guests the same, mate, where you go, like, this is a really interesting person. I'm not going to get I'm not going to get the opportunity every day to ask this person these questions. I'm going to ask it because I'm curious. So, yeah, I reckon we're the luckiest people in the world, mate.
It is a lot of fun. It's fun doing the podcast, but I always find that I have the guests, like if you were on now, and I'm hearing stuff as the conversation's going. But because I go back and then edit it, I hear so much more the second time. That's why I say to people, if you listen to a podcast, you really like it, go back and listen to it a second time, even if it's a week later. You'd be surprised what you pick up more the second time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because I don't go back and do that. Hands up, guilty as charged. But I think it's perhaps something I should do is to go back and listen to those podcasts because I'm sure I'd pick up some extra things. And I know you've made that comment to me before, mate, where in that editing process that you go through, you're picking up lots of pearls of wisdom for your own life, your own business, as well as obviously for your guests as well.
Yeah.
But I'm curious to ask you a question, Tyson. And I know we can't reduce it to one thing because there's, you've got 411 episodes in the bag. And I'm curious to ask you though, is there a theme of things that you've learned? It might not be one thing, but what have you learned about yourself, perhaps? What insights have you learned about yourself? Or what have you started thinking about differently since you've done your podcast?
Okay. Couple of things right off the top of my head, even though I wouldn't say one episode, but I'm going to mention one particular episode and the title of it because it sums up a lot of what I've taken away from the Podiatry Legends podcast. And that was episode 99 with Dr. Richard Chasen. And it was titled Be More Than Just a Pod. And even I'm not saying that was that the best episode I've ever done. It was a great episode, but to me, it summed up a lot of all the other stories of people that have been on this podcast. And they are sharing so many other things. And I get emails from podiatry students every couple of weeks. I'll get an email and say, I was thinking of leaving podiatry, but I started listening to your podcast and I went, oh my God, I didn't realize how exciting podiatry was. And that drives home the point of what Richard was saying, that you're more than just a podiatrist. There's so much more to what we do. On a personal thing, what I've taken away from it is I've become a better listener. I pause a little bit more when I talk. I try not to talk so fast, even though I still do. But I can see my own growth as a podcaster right back from beginning of It's No Secret with Dr. T right through to this episode. Just how much better I've just become at asking better questions. And so what I take away from that is everything you do, you're going to get better with experience. Whether it's playing guitar, whether it's becoming a podiatrist, you can take up swimming, it doesn't matter what it is. Repetition really pays off. So what about for you, Jesse? How would you sum up your greatest takeaways or learnings?
Look, I think obviously, very similar to yours in that sense. I think the ability to communicate is really key. And I think you summed it up when you said the ability to really listen, to ask questions, because it's really about understanding someone.
What was that? Sorry.
Yeah, I nearly fell for that.
Sorry.
But it's really interesting because in dentistry, not many people like going to the dentist. People tend to be quite anxious when they go to the dentist.
Yeah.
And so for me, being able to take those skills into either a clinical environment, which I don't do a lot of these days, but equally understanding the power, really trying to understand where someone's coming from, and the question behind the question, if that makes sense, or the point behind the point. What is it that someone's really trying to communicate? What are they really trying to say? Because the first words that come out might be the superficial answer to the question, or what's beneath that. And I think that's really been very useful. In terms of favorite episodes and favorite guests and all the rest of it, look, to be honest with you, there's so many people that in a way they all have their own special place. And maybe it's recency bias, and I'm sure there's an element of that to it. But
I agree.
Yeah, the podcast I just got off with Jim, he spoke a lot about meaning and purpose, and he spoke a lot about it's not just the job you do, it's why you do it, and having some real meaning behind what we do. And in podiatry, dentistry, there's that real human connection piece. And in the work that I do, one of our core ethoses is really around building community around as a sense of community within our coaching group. And that's really interesting on lots of different levels, because I think that it's a basic human need to feel that connection, but it's also just really good for business as well. And you don't do it necessarily for business reasons, but the happy byproduct is good business outcome. So yeah, probably recency bias with that, mate, because it's fresh in my mind. So yeah, there we go.
So even though my podcast is it's a podiatry podcast, yours is the Savvy Dentist podcast, but you have a lot more guests who aren't dentists though on your show.
Yeah, our show, probably in a way a bit like the It's No Secret podcast in a sense, it's a business show for dentists. And the whole premise of our show is not invented here. It's like, what can we learn from other industries, from podiatrists? What can dentists learn from podiatrists? What can we learn from Jim's mowing franchisees? What can we learn from one of my guests, David Boucher, is a furniture craftsman. And he builds Art Deco pieces of furniture that, he's built an interior of a Rolls Royce. Like, what sort of things can you learn about that? And it was fascinating. So I think that's the whole premise of our show. But what I really like about your show as well, because it is quite industry specific, industry relevant, but you're also approaching it from a business perspective too, right? And so there's good insights and good little life experiences and takeaways from your guests. So I think it's really good.
Yeah, well, the whole idea when I did the podcast, it was to help podiatrists feel, see, and think differently about the podiatry profession. That was the goal of it. And it was never supposed to be a technical podcast in any way. To talk about, you're
not talking heel pain, are you?
No, but we have spoken about heel pain. That's the thing. And
of course you have.
But as time's gone on, I've had a few guests that have sort of talked about different topics through from dermatology to wound management, and they have actually been really popular episodes.
Wow.
But the show was never supposed to go down that path. But some of those episodes have been really, really popular. Talking about blisters of all things was a really popular episode. But there was still a human element to it. Yeah. So even though we may be talking about like foot dermatology or using Swift in your clinic for treating warts, I still went back and spoke to the podiatrist about who they were, why they got into podiatry. It's become more of a storytelling podcast where people are telling us stories about why they got into podiatry and then what they're doing with it. And I just get excited every time I get a guest on.
Let me ask you a question, Tyson, because you interview podiatrists, and the whole concept is Podiatry Legends.
Yeah.
Help me understand where the name came from and why Legends.
That's a good question, isn't it? It came about because when I looked up the definition of legends, it was someone that had done something amazing in their lifetime or in their career, or was notorious in some way. So I looked at that. Most podiatrists aren't notorious. Nearly every podiatrist that comes is so humble. And I mean, some of these people have done some amazing things in the profession, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just an average podiatrist that just went through and just did the work." And I think it's good for every podiatrist and even dentists that are listening to anybody. Is just, if you do the work, you get the rewards.
Have you come across, gosh, do you know when you're trying to think of an author's name and it just fails you right at the moment? Stephen Pressfield, sorry.
Happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
Just everything. I always say head knocks.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, it's all the head knocks. I don't know what your excuse is.
Yeah, well, I didn't play a lot of footy, but anyway, but Stephen Pressfield talks a lot about that, actually doing the work. And he talks a lot about overcoming resistance in that. And I'm curious to ask you, because maybe that's something we should talk about, is doing the work. He talks in his book called War of Art, and he's got another one which is called Turning Pro. And in there, he talks about the need to overcome resistance. And I'm going to,
butcher it.
Totally butcher it. But, that's okay. But he talks about most people, or a lot of people, wait to feel inspired before they do the work. And his perspective is, as a writer, inspiration turns up at 9 a.m. every morning when he sits down at his keyboard.
Oh, right? Yeah.
So does that resonate with podiatry as well? Because it certainly does in dentistry, doing the work, learning the skills, mastering the fundamentals, all those sorts of things are important. I imagine they are for you too, but what's coming out of that for you?
Well, I posted a quote a couple of weeks ago, and it actually said, you're never, ever going to be motivated all the time. Therefore, you need to learn to be disciplined. And to me, that is exactly what you're saying. You need to do the work. And sometimes you're motivated to do the work, and other times you just don't want to do it. So therefore, you've got to be disciplined to do it. And also, a while back, I like to shoot a video once a week for the Podiatry Business Owners Club. And that's my Facebook group. If you happen to listen to this and you want to join the Podiatry Business Owners Club, if you're a podiatrist, come on over.
And if you're a dentist, go to the Savvy Dentist Facebook group.
Definitely. And I was going to shoot this video, and I just didn't feel like doing it. I just went, I don't want to shoot this video. I just don't want to do it. So I shot a video explaining why I didn't want to shoot a video. And what was funny, I got a lot of feedback on that one. Everyone's going, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But I knew what was funny. By the time I finished the video, I said, I knew by the time I finished this video, I was glad I did the video, and I feel like doing the video. So it was just, if I just waited for motivation to let me do it, I wouldn't have done it. But it was the discipline that I've learned that I just needed to do it.
There's a great saying that you either suffer the pain of discipline or the pain of regret.
Oh yeah.
And really funny. I was using that quote around the house with the kids on something or other. And we were driving down the road here in Canberra, and I can't remember, I didn't feel like doing something. And from the back seat, I hear, Dad, pain of discipline or the pain of regret? Which one? I was like, oh, damn.
Don't you hate it when your kids use a good advice back on you?
Oh, 100%. But it was good, but it was what I needed to hear. And, I got on and did what I needed to do. So really interesting thing about doing the work. I don't think that there's any real substitute for that. Tyson, from your perspective, this is a show for podiatrists running, podiatry businesses.
Yeah.
What is the work, or what are the fundamental things that podiatry business owners need to do and focus on, and what do they need to really master?
Listening to the podcast every week on a regular basis, making a habit of that. And I'm not saying not just my podcast, the Savvy Dentist podcast. You tell dentists to do the same thing. I think it's really important to forget about everything else, is get in the habit of constantly keeping your mindset positive. So a mutual friend, Dave Freeze, talks about marketing, for example, and he'll say there's tactical level, strategic level, and he always goes on about, and there's meta level. And meta level is mindset. He says, so if you've got a really negative mindset and you're trying to come up with a marketing strategy, it's going to be a really crappy strategy because your mind's just not in the right place. Yeah. But if you're constantly feeding your mind with good stuff, podcasts, books, getting on webinars and taking in positive information, not just constantly technical information, you're going to have a positive mindset. And then because you're looking at things differently, your strategy is going to be better. It's going to be far better in everything that you do. And one of my guests that's a prolific serial offender on my show, Jonathan Small, who Jonathan would be listening to this going, I have to get mentioned in this somewhere. But Jonathan's been on the podcast 7 times. One of the most positive people I've ever met. I met him over in Liverpool. I stayed at his house. We had burgers together. His wife Diane made these amazing hamburgers.
Yep.
But he's such a positive person to be around. And so I think you've got to take in information.
Yep.
The other part is you've got to find people that inspire and motivate you in your life, whether you meet them face to face, whether you're just talking to them on Zoom. And this is why you and we chat all the time. So
we do.
And this has got nothing to do yet with even learning anything about podiatry. This is life.
It's really interesting because, ladies and gents, I'm going to tell you that I get lots of jokes through text or SMS or Facebook Messenger from Tyson, and like a lot of jokes, right? And they're always funny, and they always make me laugh. And my wife Miranda always says to me, Tyson's one of those guys that always makes you feel better for the interaction, and it's very true. And I think that you're right. I think surrounding yourself with people like that you feel better for the experience is really important, because this is just a perspective, and it doesn't mean it's right and doesn't mean it's wrong. But my perspective is that there's enough negativity in the world. We don't need to go out and look for it. It's there. And so I think that there's a really important thing about protecting your mindset. And I think consciously surrounding yourself with, what do they say? The top 5 people in your life are the ones you become the average of, and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Or the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think if you are hanging around with positive and upbeat people that make you laugh, people that make you feel better for that interaction, that's got to be a positive thing for your mindset. And I'm sure, from Dave Freeze's perspective, then you're going to be in a more, I suppose, resourceful state to come up with a marketing campaign or do whatever it is. What do you make of that, mate? Where does humor fit into it for you?
Well, I did in my 12-week podiatry business reboot that I've been doing the last 2 years. And one of the things I talk about right at the beginning of what are your values and what are your top values in life. And with me, whether it was work or whether it's home, fun has always been a really high priority. And I remember my mum, let's go back a few years. So my dad died when he was 49, I was 17. And what happened when my dad died is a little bit of the fun left our house, as you could expect.
Of course.
And, so you go ahead, 30 years or whatever, and my mum was visiting me in Cairns, and my daughter Tia was with us and Christine. And mum was just sitting back, just watching us and all that. And then when everyone went to bed, she came up to me, she went, this house is so much fun to be in.
Isn't that nice?
She goes, this reminds me so much when you were kids growing up, just the fun and laughter we used to always have in our house. And that's the way I've always been. When my brother comes up, he says the same thing. When I'm at his place, when you and I get together, when I used to go in the clinic, we were always just having fun. And even the people I do coaching with.
Yep, fun.
I make coaching fun. And at the same time, they learn. And a few of them have said, I can't see this relationship ever ending because I get so much and I get so inspired every time we get together. And therefore, I think I attract people in my life who are the same way, like yourself.
Well, I like to think we do have a lot of fun together, Tyson. I know that, again, my wife will say, oh my God, you'd like 2 13-year-old boys in 50-year-old bodies. But that's probably a different comment altogether. But she's probably talking about our pure old jokes, perhaps. But I do think fun is really important. But coming back to the values thing, because fun is one of your core values. Yeah. And I think the thing around that, there'll be people listening to this podcast who it may be a core value for them too, but there'll be some that perhaps they've got a different set of core values, and that's okay too. But I think what I'm taking out of this, and certainly what we try to teach our guys in our coaching program, is whatever your values are is fine. If it's not fun, maybe your value is family, maybe your value is something else. But as long as you're living a life that is true and congruent with those values, then you're going to get that sense of fulfillment. You're going to feel at ease with the world. But it seems to be when you're living out of whack with that. And it reminds me, Tyson, I did some work with a guy called Dr. John DeMartini a little while ago.
Yeah.
You know John?
I know the name. Refresh my memory.
Like really, really interesting fella. We had him come and speak to our clients, and good dude. And we're having a conversation, and what often happens is that people seem to place values on us, or we take on other people's values. Like, that's what I'm meant to do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for the purposes of the audio, I'm doing air quotes with my fingers.
Yeah.
Anyway, but the point he was trying to make, and he used Tiger Woods as an example. And yeah, Tiger, top of the world, golfing champion, doing everything, And then the news broke about, his relationships with other women and blah,
Thinking
blah, blah,
with
blah,
the
blah.
wrong club.
Thinking with the wrong club. So want to make a joke about a wood.
Yes.
But
anyway, this will be in my podcast. You may not put it in the Savvy Dentist one, but
anyway, I don't know what. I'm sorry. I'm just losing my crap. Anyway, but the point that DeMartini made was because he was kind of hiding all of that stuff, and he was not really kind of externally living a life that was congruent with his internal life. His values were probably, I'm a world champion golfer. To perform well, I go and have sex with a bazillion different women.
Yeah,
and I think the comment that came out of that was, maybe if he just kind of explained that about himself, this is who I am, and kind of lived that life unapologetically, rather than feeling the need to conform to someone else's expectations of him. Now, this is a really extreme example. I understand that. I'm not saying go out and have affairs. I'm not saying any of that sort of stuff. But the point being is, he was living a life or living according to a set of values that other people had imposed upon him, and how unhappy that made him. And if we take that same concept and apply it to ourselves, if I was to put you in an environment where you needed to be really serious all the time, and there was no fun, that's probably not going to last so long. Or
I could do it for
a
day.
Yeah. Is that the day you hang out with me?
Yeah, it's my Jesse day.
That's my Jesse day. I've got my non-fun day. I'm hanging out with Jesse today.
No, I know what you mean, because I gave an example where you can have somebody who you might have you're the business owner, and your value might be success. You're really pushing for success. You employ someone whose value is family. It's really important to them, and then you get the shits. Why do they want to take the afternoon off to go to the kids' school carnival? Because it's important to them. Yeah, why do they want to, when you're telling them, you should go to this conference that's coming up, it's awesome, they go, oh no, we're going on a camping holiday with the children over that period. And you get the shits. Turn it around the other way too, where you employ someone who's really successful, but you're the business owner whose family is really important. And then wondering, why aren't you working Saturdays? I want to make more money. I want to drive my career. And you go, nah, we'd like everyone just have the weekend off and enjoy themselves. And same thing, that person's going to the conference, and they go, you should come to this conference. No, I'm going away to the Gold Coast for a week with the family. And they go, well, I'm being employed by someone who doesn't care. Yeah. And it's not they don't care, it's just got different values.
Different value sets. And that comes back to culture, the culture creation telescope. The first lens is values. And I know, you're familiar with that model as well. And, if we think about that from a team perspective, performance and culture, we've got to have culture fit. And a key part of culture fit is values alignment. Otherwise, you get that situation that, you just described, where you've either got a really gung-ho business owner who's trying to, put the defibrillator onto the team member who wants to go home for family, or the other way around. And either which way, there's a square peg round hole scenario.
So with your guests that you've had on the Savvy Dentist, and I'd say a lot of the guests that I've had on Podiatry Legends as well, a lot of them have this shit together. Not completely. It doesn't mean that everybody on the surface, anyone can look like they've got it all together. But a lot of my guests, and I've listened to a hell of a lot of episodes on the Savvy Dentist, a lot of these people, they know who they are, they know what they want, and they know what makes them happy, which is why they're usually successful in the field of dentistry, podiatry, or outside of it.
Yeah, it's like they're comfortable in their own skin a bit, isn't it? And as you say, they know who they are, and they're living a life that's purposeful for them. And I think again, another quote that I'm about to butcher for you, mate.
I think everyone's used to it by now. That's right.
Like we're 27 minutes in, mate. So, they should be used to me stuffing things up by now. I'm not sure if we're going to release this one on Savvy Dentist, mate. I'm joking. I'm kidding. But
you'll just edit it a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think it'll need a bit with me. Anyway, but the quote I'm about to butcher is, I think, something along the lines of success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. I think when you said you've got those guests that come on, and I've had guests that come on, they've got their shit together.
Yeah.
They've got, what comes out of that for me is a sense of fulfillment. They might have achieved commercial success to, whatever degree, but they're really content. Do you notice that?
Yeah. Well, it's no different. Like, I've caught up with people that I've known through university or school or something like that, and they have not achieved massive things in their life if you looked at it financially. But my God, they are the happiest people you'd ever want to meet.
Yeah.
So for them, they are living the life that they wanted to live. It's not about who's got the biggest house, biggest car, the most money in the bank account. And I know there's certain people, that's how they measure things. But there's a lot of people that don't measure it that way. And to me, it's finding what makes you happy.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Matt. And this is a really topical thing in some people I'm working with at the moment, people I'm talking to. But it is really about finding that personal definition of success. And, everyone's different. What you want, what I want, what our guests want, we're all different. We all have different aspirations, and there's nothing wrong with any of those things as long as they make sense for that particular individual. And I think the key thing though is to make sure you're putting your ladder up the right tree. And if you're building a podiatry business or building a dental business, that you build a business that gives you a life that you love as much as anything else. And that's kind of a life well lived to me, I think, mate.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the guests that I had on, Dr. James Kent in the United States, and the episode was called "Young, Poor, and Single."
Oh yeah, okay.
And he's such a nice guy. I met him over in America at a conference, and he just said, when you're first building a business, he said the best thing to be is young, because you've got energy to burn. Poor, because you got, the only way is up. You need money. It'll drive you. And single, you don't have any commitments. You can just really dig down into it. But as he's gotten older now, he's done everything that he needed to do. And you can tell that how content he is on that particular podcast episode. You know that he got to whatever his level of success was to him. And I know that he's married. I know he's got children. So, I just, that episode was one that I thought, wish every new graduate would just sit down and listen to that episode. And use it as the motivation. And for people who maybe you're not young anymore, you're old, rich, and married, it's also a good place to be.
Happy days. Well, I think that's a good one. But on that point, Tyson, I was talking to one of our clients who Barry.
Yeah.
And
Barry's nicest guy in the world.
Yep, he's a really good fella. I'm looking over your shoulder. I'm looking at Podiatry Legends, and I would put Barry in the category of dental legend. He's just a really good fella. Very wise, very thoughtful, very considered.
He is like I said, he is just the nicest person you want to meet. And I've seen him interacting with younger dentists in your group.
Yep.
And he is openly sharing everything. Everything. He doesn't hide. He's not afraid. Oh, I don't want to tell him my inner secrets. Tells him everything.
Everything. But what's been really interesting, because Barry is, a little bit older than me, probably not quite as old as you.
You look older than Barry. Sorry, I didn't realize.
I know Barry's holding up pretty well.
He does dragon boating, I think.
He does.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting in the conversation about Barry is how priorities shift as you get a bit older as well. And I think that's a really important thing to understand is, going back to the young, poor and single metaphor, is that what's important to you at one point in your life becomes more or less important to you at a different stage of life. And I think that's okay too, because what a lot of our clients have had to adjust to is their changing needs, their changing desires, their changing circumstances, and have their practices adjust accordingly. Have you seen that over the course of podiatry as well? Do you see the clients that you coach, when they're young and hungry, really, go, and then mellow out a little bit as I get a bit older? What is that something?
I'm sure it depends what you've done through your career. But yeah, a lot of the younger podiatrists that have got a lot more get up and go, a lot more fire, and they've got the energy to do it, and they're enthusiastic. And yes, there are some people but a lot of people I've done coaching with have been slightly older, more mature,
but really going for it.
But have still got that fire in their belly, and they just want to do it better. They feel they've been working really hard, and they're like a duck treading water, and they're not really sort of going too far. But I think even my own priorities change. So, an example: when I was younger, always wanted to have 911 Porsche. That was I want to get a 911 Porsche. I was driving a Volkswagen at the time, a '66 Volkswagen. When I was really young, wanted a 911 Porsche.
Yeah.
Move ahead 30-something years. Yep. I could go and buy a 911 Porsche. You know what I want right now? I want to get a VW, a 1966 hotted up VW Beetle.
Probably more expensive than the Porsche these days too.
It could be too. But it's one of those things that you sort of, I think when you're younger, what you want, and then as you get old, like you said, your priorities change, and it's sort of, it's the importance of things as well.
100%. And just to clarify something, I didn't mean to infer that motivation disappears or wanes.
Oh, no.
It's just that their motivation is applied in different areas of their life. And I think you're right, we talk about a hierarchy of needs, much like Maslow's hierarchy of needs in life. We talk about a business hierarchy of needs, and the first one is money, and then time, and then meaning. And so, kind of once money is taken care of, we all need it. It's all part of the world. Then I think, like you said, time and meaning and fulfillment, all those other things become the area that we want to explore more and achieve more in, and all that sort of stuff. So I think you're spot on, mate.
So that was something I've picked up from some of the guests, was some of the younger ones too, that they're looking at podiatry differently as well.
In what way?
They're wanting to be, they don't want to be just another podiatrist.
Yeah.
They're like what Richard Chase said, you're more than just a podiatrist, you're whatever you want to be. And a lot of them are setting up clinics that are a little bit different.
Yeah.
And some of the young ones are holding off and not getting jobs straight away. They're waiting for the better job to sort of come about, or they're only working part-time. And I've heard that from podiatrists that I've worked with, that there's a lot of younger podiatrists now that would rather work 4 days a week and have a 3-day weekend than work 5 days. The lifestyle, the lifestyle's a little bit more important.
And that's coming back to those values. If that's an important value for that person, then great. Knock yourself out. I think, again, it's what you said earlier. It's about being true to yourself and living congruently with that, Tyson. I think, there's no right, there's no wrong. If it's 4 days a week, 3 days a week, 6 days a week, if that's what's important to that person, then giddy up, go for it, I say, mate. Hey, question for you.
Yeah.
Just as you reflect on your 200th episode of the Podiatry Legends podcast, and again, knowing that we can't.
And the 350th Savvy Dentist podcast, yes.
Yeah. What I wanted to ask.
Which you may not release.
Well, after my joke about wood before, I'm still a bit twitchy. My audience is probably not used to me in that regard.
And that's the thing. I'll point something out. So Jesse and I, the reason we get on is we're a little bit different. And
do you think?
Yeah. And Jesse's podcast and his coaching group and all that is used to Jesse probably being a little bit more reserved. And I tend to bring the worst out in him.
Yeah. And so this is a really interesting comment. No, seriously, if we go back to congruence and values, I don't think that there's an incongruence there. It's just that you share parts of your life in certain environments and other parts of your life in other environments, right? And so when Tyson says he brings the worst out of me, I'm not sure that he brings the worst out of me, but he appeals to a naughty side of my sense of humor, which likes to, swear and be inappropriate. And
well, Christine says one of the things she likes about me the most is she says I'm always the same. She says it doesn't matter where you are, you're the same person. So how I am on a podcast is how I am on stage when I talk, is how I am when you actually meet me. But she said also that sometimes the biggest negative about me is sometimes I'm the same person regardless of where I am.
Yeah, I tend to moderate my behavior based on
and you're really good at moderation, and I'm really poor.
Yeah, but
at moderation.
I think there's pros and cons either way, right? I think in your case, being the same all the time, like, you know what you're going to get. Like, there's no surprise, right? You know, Tyson's always going to be, in my words, appropriately inappropriate.
Yeah.
And I love that about you. I think that's what makes me laugh. And when we got together for my 50th.
But even when I was at your event last year and I did the 1.5 hour talk on creating headlines.
Yep.
And I was up on stage and I was just being myself and I cracked my usual jokes and all that. But at no stage did I offend anybody. Did I say anything that was inappropriate? But I do have a little bit of fun.
I didn't show you the feedback forms?
No. I should have asked before I said that comment.
No, sorry, no, I'm joking. I'm kidding, of course.
Yeah,
No,
I did harass a few people a few times. I did say a couple of things. I went, probably shouldn't have said that, but it was all right.
But it's all right. But you were yourself and you didn't offend anyone. You always have a joke.
But the feedback I got from people talking about that particular
really
topic was really good feedback.
The thing is, Tyson, the person you tease most of all is yourself. The person you hang crap on more than anyone is yourself. And that's fun and endearing. It was all good. But I think it's really interesting because I think that, that you can show different parts of your personality in different environments. I probably, when my grandmother was alive, probably wouldn't have gone in and dropped the F-bomb with my grandma, although she probably would have coped with it better than other relatives.
Yeah, no, I don't swear in front of my mum.
No? What happens?
Oh, no, it's not that I haven't. And it's not that I couldn't.
No, but it's just how you behave in a different environment.
I rarely, do I swear? Yes. But I don't swear on the podcast. I don't swear on stage. I don't swear with my in-laws. I don't swear when there's kids around.
No.
But if I'm watching the football and the Roosters are getting beaten by the Broncos, I swear.
Well, that doesn't happen that often. So
no, so I don't really swear at all then.
Exactly right. But it is really interesting that, I think we all do moderate our behavior to a certain degree, but I do agree with Christine. You're a very consistent person, and I think that's a great thing. I'm consistent in the environments I'm in. So when I'm working, I'm consistent. When I'm not working, I'm consistent. And it's not like there's chalk and cheese between work Jesse and personal Jesse, but I do moderate my behavior based on where I am. And anyway, that's just me.
But I'll give you an example though. There's a person that we both know is a dentist from South Australia, really, really tall dentist.
Yeah.
Michael. And Michael thinks the sun shines out of your bum. When I've spoken to him, he just thinks so much of you.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that I also get on really well with Michael.
Yeah.
And we are different personalities. But it just, for him, it just basically works. So anyway, you're going to ask me a question about something.
Yeah, I've forgotten it, mate.
Okay, that's all right.
But it was good.
Oh, it was a good one.
It was a good one. It was great. Ladies and gents, you can tell that we've rehearsed deeply for this particular episode. And I do actually have quite a few questions for you. I shouldn't joke about that. Tyson, here's what I'd like to ask you. When it comes to, Podiatry Legends is someone who's done something extraordinary with their career and so on. And you said that part of being extraordinary is about doing the work and fulfilling the practice and not the practice as in the space in which you operate, but the practice of being a podiatry, mastering the fundamentals. What else allows people to achieve asymmetrical results in life, do you think?
Collaborations. I used to always think, when I first had my podiatry practice, I used to think it was just all about me. And not so much just in a selfish way, but I would never ask anyone for help. I would just do it all myself. And I never felt I needed to work with anybody else or have a partner or anything. It was just, if it's going to do it, I'll just get it done. Since doing the podcast though, through the podcast, and even the quote I have on the back of my wall, the next connection you make could be the one that changes your life.
Mm-hmm.
Through the podcast, I've connected with other podiatrists that, Jim McDonald, that I do the podiatry marketing podcast with now. And there's other people in the profession that I'm now starting to do things with. And the podcast has taught me to drop my guard and go, you know what? It's good to work with other people. It's fun to work with other people.
I just want to ask you something, mate. Have you a podiatry marketing podcast? Are you
Oh, yeah, there's some extra episodes.
I was just going to say.
I forgot to mention that one before, didn't I?
I know. I just want to ask, like, are you having an affair on me or something, mate? Because, I feel like, hang on, you got this whole side thing going on. I didn't know about it.
Didn't you know about that podcast?
No, I did not.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we started at beginning of the year.
There you go. So what, you're about a dozen episodes in, give or take?
Yeah, about that. I think it's about 15, 16. We've recorded probably about 30. So we're
not adding 30 to the stats just now until they're released. I'm just going to tell you that straight up.
Okay. So just 16. but that's one thing I've picked up, that I was able to speak in Ireland, like through Zoom at a conference because of the podcast. I spoke to the Ontario Podiatry Society over there through the podcast. Greg Lawrence was a guest on the show. So it's amazing the people that you meet and what doors it actually opens up. And that's why I'm just huge into, when you go to a conference, don't just stick with the same people that you know. Is go and meet some other people and network and see who knows who. And it's surprising the doors that will open up to you when you allow more people sort of into your life.
100%. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, Tyson, is, the value of community. We spoke about that a bit earlier. But with all the COVID stuff and all the bits and pieces that's been going on, I don't know about you, but I am totally looking forward to seeing people in real life, press the flesh, shake hands.
Oh, yes.
I'm really looking forward to that. And I think that going to events, part of it, I think what is really mandatory for success in any endeavor in life is to interact with other people, to learn from other people. And for me, again, Zoom's great. And of course, it's wonderful. We're recording this on Zoom and Zoom's tremendous. But I also think that, I don't know, mate, for me, there's something special that happens when you put a couple of people in a room and let them talk and see what comes of it. And I'm really looking forward to getting back to real life events, like in-person events. So I don't know about you, mate, but I can't wait for that.
Well, what I'm looking forward to is I kicked this podcast off. Was it 3 years ago? It was 3 years ago. I kicked this podcast off.
Oh, wow.
And so I haven't been to a lot of live events since this podcast has been going. What I'm really looking forward to is going to some podiatry events and catching up with people that have been on my show and actually meeting some of these people face to face. But also, I know a lot of people who have listened to other guests have reached out and are now connected with them. So I think some of these podiatry conferences coming up in the next year or two are going to be extremely social, of people meeting each other, but they've all met each other, listening to the podcast, then reaching out and connecting with each other. So it should be fun.
I reckon if you were to do that, Tyson, here's what I reckon, just as a thought. I reckon you should get everyone to wear a Podiatry Legends t-shirt who's either been a guest on the show or connected with someone, and then everyone's in their Podiatry Legends t-shirt and you all gather up for a bit of a socially.
We did that in the UK when through the podcast. Tony Gavin was my first official guest on episode number 2, and he has Osgo, and they run this thing called the Foot and Ankle Show in the UK. So in 2019, he said, "Oh, do you want to come over and speak at the event? 1,000 people there." Yeah, so I went and did it, and I took shirts over everyone in the UK that had spoken on my podcast. Then we got a whole pile of photos of us all together at the actual event. And it was a lot of fun.
I reckon you should do the same thing here in Australia or New Zealand or wherever you're going to next. I think that'd be fun because then it creates a sense of community around Podiatry Legends too, for what it's worth.
Yeah, people might want Podiatry Legends shirts. People might say a supporter shirt, like a 100%. Football jersey.
In Roosters colours, right?
In Roosters colours, of course. No, it's all the Barcelona red and white is my colour.
Barcelona red and white. All righty, there you go.
So with you, what sort of collaboration through the Savvy Dentist podcast, have you been able to develop any collaborations with other people?
Yeah, I have. And it's been really interesting. I had lots of opportunities to speak at different events and to get to know people I wouldn't otherwise have gotten to know. Now, most of my guests, though, are not in the dental space. So there's not been such a great deal of collaboration there. But what it has provided me is the opportunity to collaborate with lots of people within the industry, dentists, but also the people that look after dentists. So accounting companies, people that do infection control training, people that do all manner of things that support our community. And it's been really nice because we get to meet each other, talk to each other, share notes, swap notes, compare things, do some joint venture things together. And in actual fact, we're about to launch another business off the back of those collaborations. And so we've got a whole new business developing, really, which came as a collaboration from the podcast. So yeah, we've been really, really pleased with that. So it's been good. It's been good. I actually got to collaborate with another couple of podcasters as well. Three of us got together to form a CPD directory site called CPD Junkie. And, there was 3 podcasters just hanging out, talking about microphones and cool stuff.
Before we finish up, because I'm just looking at the time and we do have to wrap things up.
Yep.
Have you got any other final takeaways from having guests on that you want to share before we call it a day?
Look, I think it comes back to what you said earlier. I think the podcasting has taught me to listen intently and to listen deliberately. And I think that's a really good skill in life. It's a great skill for your relationships. It's a great skill for, obviously seeing patients, whether they're a podiatrist or a dentist. But the other thing I've really learned about podcasting is the follow-up question. And that is really to try and get beneath the surface, to get that depth of understanding. So I think, those things I'd share. And I'd say that if anyone really wanted to do a podcast for their brick and mortar business, I'd say do it. I'd say do it because it's fun. You'll meet lots of interesting people.
Oh, definitely fun.
You'll have great conversations. You'll learn stuff that you wouldn't even have thought you'd learn. And as you said earlier, Tyson, I think the podcast host is the luckiest one in the whole room, basically.
Oh, I think so. I think it is. And the last thing I want to share with everybody is I just think it was something I learned from Dave Freeze. Dave Freeze, who's been on this podcast as well, said, everybody you meet can teach you something. Every single person you meet can teach you something, and everybody has a unique story about them. So I look at everything from when I had a group of students on and we did a student episode, to having Josh Taylor on, who was a second-year podiatry student, through to having a group of people who had graduated in their first year. And some of these have been some of the most popular episodes, right through to people listening to this will know the Dannenbergs and the Armstrongs, the people, the Bartholds that have got big names in our profession.
And the Franklins.
And the Greens, Jesse Green. But I'll throw out Wilson Lawrence, he's cool as well. But everybody's got a story. And I think it's really important when you're out and about and you're meeting people, is just realize every single person you bump into has got a story and there's something that you can learn from them. And if you can learn one thing from every person you meet, geez, you're going to have a fun life.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, mate, I know we're going to wrap up, but well done. 200, mate. Well done. That's fantastic. You've
gone quick.
It has gone quickly. You've been doing this 3 years or thereabouts now. We're going to add in the extra 211 plus, 16 of the others. So you've racked up.
I said to someone this morning, actually, I said, by the time I had It's No Secret, Podiatry Legends, the podiatry marketing one, and me being guests on other shows, I said, I've done over 600 podcasts now, which is probably why I'm really comfortable in front of a microphone. It only took about 450.
Yeah, I was going to say, but yeah, by 590, I got to be okay.
Yeah, got really good. So, and congratulations to you too, Jesse, with Savvy Dentist podcast, 350. Mate. And I recommend everyone go over and check it out, and because you will enjoy it.
And same with Tyson's podcast. For the dentists listening, go and check out Podiatry Legends. You will learn something for sure, because as Tyson said, all you've got to do is understand that everyone's got something to teach us. And I think that's a really good way to close the show, mate, because I think so. There's lots of wisdom there. So thanks, mate, for having me. It's been good fun.
It has been great. And I'm not even going to do an ending on this particular episode. I'm just going to let it finish as it is there. A little bit of music will come in towards the end now, which people will be listening to.
What sort of music? Banjos?
It should.
I reckon can we go out to the Bonanza theme?
Bonanza?
Didn't you watch the TV show Bonanza?
We're at Rawhide. Rawhide.
Yeah,
no, that's terrible. Okay, I'll put in some music there instead. Okay, Jesse, thanks for sharing this episode with me, and it was fun doing it with you as well.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Always good fun. Cheers, mate.
Okay, bye.